Hey there, we're Emily and Joe of the Fantastic Life, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Pivot Firebird at Gooseberry Mesa in Hurricane, Utah. Let's see what this bike can do on a trail that's not necessarily meant for.
All right, we're gearing up for a ride at Gooseberry Mesa, and you might notice that something looks a little different in the back here. So as you guys might have seen in previous videos, Joe's been having some bike trouble, so he's demoing a Pivot Firebird from Over the Edge Hurricane, and it looks pretty spiffy. So we're gonna go out and take it for a test ride.
We just took the Pivot Firebird on Gooseberry Mesa, which is not the right ride for this bike. It's an enduro bike, 170 up front, 165 in the back. This particular build has the factory Fox 38 in the front, the Performance Float X in the back. It has a XT derailleur on there. I would say that I was riding this bike mostly for the frame and to feel what that felt like on a trail that was not necessarily built for this bike, because we ride bikes everywhere. So I thought that it would be interesting, not only for me, as I'm always thinking about what my next bike is going to be, but for people that can only have one bike, because there's a lot of us out there. Bikes are expensive and you want a bike that can do a lot. I usually like to ride enduro style trails, so specifically more downhill stuff, but you got to pedal to get up there. So you want to have a bike that can pedal. When I'm thinking about what kind of bike I want something that can be enduro, can have fun at the bike park, and I could take on a cross country ride. It's not going to be ideal for it like this one, but you can still have fun.
Very first impressions are that the bike is well balanced, easy to balance and track stand, and third time is a charm. Okay. So I was saying the bike's well balanced, it climbs pretty well. I immediately am not super thrilled on the components that are on here. It's got a Fox Factory 38 fork, which is cool, which I'm used to. Got a Performance shock. I really am not getting along with the bars. They almost feel like they dip down, and they're just the stock bars, I believe. The brakes also are the XLS, I believe, or I'm sorry, SLX, and they suck, especially coming from the TRPs I'm used to. There's no power in these brakes. The bike feels a little bit longer. I'll get all the specs for you. Climbs pretty darn well, and we're out at Gooseberry Mesa, and the reason that we picked this trail to ride this bike on is because this bike isn't necessarily made for this type of trail, but we get one bike in the van, and we prefer enduro style riding, but the bike has to be all around enough to ride a trail like this and have fun, and then also have fun at a bike park. This is, I feel like, a great test. If I can have fun on the Firebird at Gooseberry Mesa, then it's a really good all-around bike. Looks like there's a fun line right here. Woo! So far I'm very impressed with the climbing ability of this thing. I feel like it actually thrives when I get out of the saddle. Whew. Whew, another instance where Firebird climbs really well. I should mention I got a large and I'm 6'1", and I sat on both the large and the medium because I've heard these bikes are long, and the large definitely fit me better. Not sure what my inseam or my arm length is, but I could tell immediately that the large was a better fit. Some sort of a move here. Kinda, maybe. Whew, look at that view. Amazing. Oh, missed the last part. That was a rider error more than bike. I should have got that. This is why the Mesa rides are so good. View is so amazing. Whew. Hope the brakes are gonna work. Kinda, not really. Not as much as I want them to.
I remember walking up this.
Can I make the turn? Had to put a foot down. It's too tight. I'm gonna go back up and see if I can find a better line. Trying to get the tuck moves on the Firebird.
Did it!
Oh geez. I think this is the way. Oh yeah. Should be okay. You know, the more I ride this bike, the more nimble I feel like it feels, so that's cool. Whew. I've been navigating Firebird through some of this janky jank here, which is cool to test it on because it's actually performing really nicely. I think that I needed to get used to the brake pull a little bit because I use TRPs normally, and those things just modulate and then they have a lot of power. So we got to pull these brakes a lot harder, but it becomes more lively the more that I ride it and the more I get used to it. So I read, I don't know where this trail goes. It's hard to navigate and talk at the same time. But anyway, I'll try my best. So I read that this bike really wants to go fast. And I'm sure that's the case, but I am super pleasantly surprised with how it is doing on this tech stuff. I don't know that I would want it for this as my main bike if I had a choice, but it definitely can do it without too much trouble. Where do we go? I mean, just like that, it's like slow down, no problem, tires get grip. Much better than you would think for a big old bike. So you can probably safely say that if you had this as an all-arounder, you'd be decently happy with it. I would still definitely recommend getting on one before you buy it, just because every bike kind of has a different fit and feel for you. Woo! Tight turns. Very cool back here. So it's something I'm just thinking about as I went down that tech section. The bike points and shoots pretty good. It's similar to my Rail 29, so I don't feel like it's a lot easier to control. Similar for sure on that tech. It's a bigger bike. It rides like a big bike, but you can still pedal it really, really well. And I'm not gonna get really into the geometry on this, but I'm more interested in like giving you the idea of how it felt when I was riding this bike. It felt way better at balancing and then explosive uphill pedaling than I would have thought. I was able to make most of the moves on this trail really easily, just as easily as my Rail 29 and probably just as easily as a much smaller bike. So the pedal stroke transferred power into the rear wheel really, really nicely, and I was able to push the bike up over obstacles. The times that it felt big were turning. When I was trying to make tight turns, I could still maneuver it and kind of like pivot a little bit, but it was definitely those spots where I felt like it wasn't ideal for this bike. This bike is great if you want to just point it in a direction and just let it romp. But I think that the highlight that I'm bringing out of this particular review is that it can also do technical climbing quite well. Like, I would not be sad at all if this was my bike and I had to ride it here. Ideally, you have 4 different bikes and you can fit each one of them for each trail that you want to ride, but it still performed and I had a ton of fun. So it checked that box of being able to have fun on a technical cross-country style trail. And obviously when you had the drops and the downhills, it just felt really good, really confidence inspiring. It felt pretty similar actually to
my Rail 29 when I was trying to find lines downhill and point it and like have the confidence in that. So it felt similar. I really didn't like the cockpit setup. I would definitely throw new bars on right away. I like to have more rise and sweep in my bars than these ones that are on there. As far as playfulness goes, it was interesting because it felt like a long bike. So pivoting and trying to whip it and things wasn't the easiest, but when I tried to bunny hop it and I was able to, like, you know, hop from one rock to another, it really loaded the suspension well and got into the air. So that was surprising to me. It's kind of like a contrast, but I was still able to have fun with it on slow speed, kind of like hoppy stuff, which was a surprise. At first when I got on it, I thought, oh, this is going to be pretty hard to get up into the air. Another thing is that as far as like manualing, at first it took a little bit of figuring out. It definitely felt like it was harder to get the front end up in the air initially, but what I found was I just had to get more comfortable with where my body position was in relationship to the bike. And once I figured that out, I could really manual it up onto rocks and, you know, kind of play around with it a lot easier than I thought. So the first half of the ride was kind of like getting used to the bike, and the second half of the ride was like, wow, this is really actually a fun bike even on this terrain. Now, I would not like to ride this type of terrain really on any bike. It's not the kind of terrain that I enjoy riding, so they take that into account, and I think that that says a lot about how much fun I was able to have on this bike. If you guys have any questions about it, let me know. The first things I would do on it is probably throw on different handlebars, different brakes, maybe different drivetrain, but as far as the bike itself, I really thought it was cool. Like, if I was riding this bike full time, I would not be disappointed with it. Last but not least, I'm a stickler about noise on my bike. This bike, for the most part, it was pretty quiet, but I should say there were no like cable ties or anything like that. The way that the cable comes here out of the frame and then goes actually back into the frame again here in the rear triangle, I think it was vibrating a little bit. And these are all things that it didn't bother me too much, because I felt like if this was my bike, I could easily figure that out and quiet those things down with a little bit of foam tape or something like that. But all in all, I felt like the bike, it rode pretty quiet. I think that I could take this and make it a quiet bike pretty easily. There you have it, guys. If you have any questions, let me know. Appreciate you watching. I'd be really excited to see what this bike did on a proper enduro or downhill trail or bike park. Unfortunately, I probably won't be riding it there myself. So hopefully those of you that were interested in how this bike did as an all-rounder will find this video interesting, and you can watch someone else's video on how they romped it down some really steep stuff, because I'm sure there's tons of videos like that out there. And I don't think that this isn't obviously a very new bike, but I think that it's still very relevant, which is why I'm riding it and why I think it's still interesting to be reviewing a bike like this, because you're gonna see deals on this bike right now, and that's why I'm riding. I think that it's gonna be a great bike for many years to come. If you guys would like to see me ride any other bikes, definitely let me know, because I'm always on the hunt to ride cool new bikes and do reviews on them, and happy for any input or thoughts or ideas that you have. So thanks for watching. Again, let me know if you have any questions, and have a fantastic rest of your day.